She wants to fight grace. Shri Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Bhaktivinoda Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, manifested and unmanifested. All glories assembled devotees, all glories assembled devotees, all glories, all glories. Shri Guru.
What about us? We're assembled too.
You can be one of those. Yes. 30 back. No, just on my teeth, actually. Thank you. This is okay. Sure. It's okay. Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to read a little bit today from Chaitanya Charitamrita and then share a few thoughts. Today is the appearance or disappearance? I'm not sure. Appearance day of Vrndavana Das Thakura, the writer of the Chaitanya Bhagavat, known by two names, but mostly known today as the Chaitanya Bhagavat. So I'm going to read a little bit from the Chaitanya Charitamrita and then share a few thoughts about the meaning of the meaning of this day. So thank you, those of you that are not at Sadhu Sangas in Florida this year. Is that right? Yeah. There are a lot of people there. A big, the flowing of the Ganges from across primarily the Northeast, I guess Central, probably a few people from the West States and Canada down there. So it's nice to be with to have a small Sadhu Sangha here. That's very important. Actually, quantity doesn't matter so much with Sadhu Sangha, really. You know, it's about quality, you know. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare.
So reading a little bit from Chaitanya Charitamrita, beginning, this is the Adi Leela, chapter 8. The author receives the orders of Krishna and Guru, beginning with, we'll start with text number 32. And then I might read a little bit from what I found online from Nandanandan Prabhu about Vrndavana Das Thakura, and then just a few reflections about why these appearance days are important for us. So I'll just read the English. I think that'll be okay. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the independent Supreme Personality of Godhead, is greatly magnanimous. Unless one worships him, one can never be liberated. Oh fools, this is to all of us, right? Because obviously it's for people that are hearing it, right? So we're hearing it, so we're part of the foolish assembly. Oh fools, just read Sri Chaitanya Mangala. By reading this book, you can understand all the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Purport. Sri Vrndavana Das Thakura's Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat was originally entitled Sri Chaitanya Mangala. But when Srila Lochan Das Thakur later wrote another book named Sri Chaitanya Mangala, Srila Vrndavana Das Thakur changed the name of his own book, which is now therefore known as Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. The life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very elaborately described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has already informed us that in his Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, translated as we know by Srila Prabhupada, he has described whatever Vrndavana Das Thakur has not mentioned. This acceptance of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami indicates his acceptance of the disciplic succession. A writer of translated literature never tries to surpass the previous acharyas. So just a quick comment on that. It's interesting because, so he had already written a book about Lord Chaitanya and given it a name. And then later another Vaishnava wrote a book and gave it a name. He changed the name of his book. Now, if you think about it, I've never written any books. I have a lot of friends that have written books. But if I wrote a book, or I can imagine people have written books, And a few later, somebody else uses the same title. I either call them, or I have somebody more senior call them, or maybe like we're talking about, if I live in Philadelphia, in some cities, I have my lawyer call them. And I tell them, look, Prabhu, i.e. buddy, I got this name first. You need to change the name. But he didn't. He changed the name of his book. So we don't know much more. I don't know much more about the dynamics of it, but it's quite interesting. And I think that in itself is quite informative for us about how we should live and think. And he's even thinking that the book's not his, so he can change the name. He's certainly not thinking the book and my name and my prestige are all wrapped up. And this is like we live in the age of branding, right? I was driving in here. I stayed with Yogeshwar Prabhu last night. I was driving in early morning, so kind of dark, and was noticing at certain exits you could see certain lights, and okay, that's a gas station. That must be BP because it's green, and that's Sunoco. So everybody, even gas stations, they have their brand, and they're attached to that, right? You put up lights around your gas station with their color lights. You're going to hear from the lawyer, you can't have those color lights, or however it works. They're very territorial, and there's whole wars in the world about territories. But here he's saying, no, that's okay. I'll change the name of my book. So it's a very different way of looking at things. As Vyasadeva has compiled all the pastimes of Lord Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam, Thakur Vrndavana Das has depicted the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Thakur Vrndavana Das has composed Sri Chaitanya Mangalam. Hearing this book annihilates all misfortune. By reading Sri Chaitanya Mangala, one can understand all the glories and truths of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda and come to the ultimate conclusion of devotional service to Lord Krishna. Part of the purport, I'll read. Prabhupada writes, Srimad Bhagavatam is the authoritative reference book from which to understand devotional service. But because it is very elaborate, few men can understand its purport. Srimad Bhagavatam, or purpose, you could say. What's the actual meaning there? Srimad Bhagavatam is the original commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which is called Nyaya Prasthana. It was written to enable one to understand the absolute truth through infallible logic and argument, and therefore its natural commentary. Text 37. In Sri Chaitanya Mangala, later known, Prabhupada writes, it's in brackets, later known as Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, Srila Vrndavana Das Thakura has given the conclusion and essence of devotional service by quoting the authoritative statements of Srimad Bhagavatam. Even if a great atheist hears Sri Chaitanya Mangala, he immediately becomes a great devotee. The subject matter of this book is so sublime that it appears that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has personally spoken through the writings of Sri Vrndavana Das Thakura. Prabhupada's purport, part of this, he writes transcendental literature that strictly follows the Vedic principles and the conclusion of the Puranas and the Pancharatriki Vidhi can be written only by a pure devotee. It is not possible for a common man to write books on bhakti, for his writings will not be effective. He may be a very great scholar and may be expert in presenting literature in flowery language, but this is not at all helpful in understanding transcendental literature. Even if transcendental literature is written in faulty language, it is acceptable if it is written by a devotee, whereas so-called transcendental literature written by a mundane scholar, even if it is very highly polished literary presentation, cannot be accepted. The secret in a devotee's writing is that when he writes about the pastimes of the Lord helps him. He does not write alone. Nice. Read a little more. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Tadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yena Bam Upayantite. Since the devotee writes in the service to the Lord from within gives him so much intelligence that he sits down near the Lord and goes on writing books. Continued. I offer millions of obeisances unto the lotus feet of Vrndavana Das Thakura. No one else could write such a wonderful book for the deliverance of all fallen souls. And he mentions Narayani, who is the mother of Vrndavana Das Thakura. Narayani eternally eats the remnants of the food of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Vrndavana Das Thakura was born of her womb. What a wonderful description he has given of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Anyone in the three worlds who hears it is purified. I fervently appeal to everyone to adopt the method of devotional service given by Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, and thus be freed from the miseries of material existence and ultimately achieve the loving service of the Lord. Srila Vrndavana Das Thakura has written Sri Chaitanya Mangala, and therein described in all respects the pastimes of the Lord Chaitanya. He first summarized all the pastimes of the Lord and later described them vividly in detail. Jai. Srila Vrndavana Das Thakura ki jai. Srila Prabhupada. Thank you much. So let's get Brahmachari garb today.
This is for Jai Advaita Maharaj. He's initiating
Oh, that's very appropriate color.
today. Yeah.
Nice. Very good. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamani Namaste Saraswati. So I was at an event on Thursday night of a very large law firm who is exclusively dedicated to fighting for religious freedom.
Wow.
They recently they were explaining to everybody they've been to the Supreme Court 11 times and their record is 11-0.
Wow.
And I mentioned that because what was it? How did I bring that up? Because I spoke with was meeting different people. Well, I spoke with one lady. This is original thoughts gone, but there's a lot of people from the LDS church there. And any of you that ever meet members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they used to be called Mormons, but then they decided they don't want to be called Mormons anymore. So you have to say the church or whatever. But you just mentioned, do you know about our temple in Spanish Fork? Have you been to the Color Fest? And 9 out of 10 times, they'll either say, oh, I've been there, or my kids go there, or my grandkids go there, or my friends go there, or I always wanted to go there. It's very well known. Very, very well known. So, there was something else about the lady I wanted to say, but it's escaping me, so maybe I'll remember it later. So, thank you. Oh, I know what it was. She was the same woman who had been to the color throw. Her husband was a very high position at Brigham Young University. She was doing research on the impact of online learning, particularly during COVID, when all the kids were forced to be online. Now, some didn't have access to that, and some didn't have access to that, and the positive impacts and the negative impacts. So I was just thinking similarly here. It was gradually growing. Thank you all for coming. We started with like 3 of us, then it was 4, now it's up to 2, 4, 6. And out there could be millions for all we know. So online learning, the power of online learning is very appropriate. So it's very nice to be here on the holiday weekend. We know there's many at the big Sadhu Sangha event in Florida. But as I mentioned earlier, we all really exist. Without Sadhu Sangha, we really would be, I can know myself, it's not theory. I know I would not at all be a devotee if there weren't other devotees. Even devotees who aren't Vaishnavas, I benefit from in terms of keeping me focused that there is like a spirituality, because there's a lot of folks out there that don't think there's a spiritual reality and think that the goal really is making money and buying things and getting position and getting power. And, I live in Washington, D.C. It's like amazing some of the things going on down there these days. And you stop and think, like, you people really think you're the body. You really believe that by accumulating money and power and influence that you're going to be happy. You really believe that? Like, you really seem to believe that. And you really think that you are a member of this tribe and that you don't like the members of that tribe, and that's okay? You really think that? It's you guys are crazy. but the reason we can maintain our sanity on these topics is because of Sadhu Sangha. So we're very, very fortunate. So today, as we were reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, the appearance of Vrndavana Das Thakura, and just a few reflections on that, it actually, it's important for us to, even if we don't have in-depth knowledge, which I certainly don't, I had to do a little research, and Jani Tai Kani found the appropriate verses in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Even if we don't have so much knowledge of these different personalities of our lineage, it is important for us to know about them and their contributions for a lot of different reasons. One of which is to establish authenticity. You know, we live in the age of fake news and so many allegations and charges against, you know, what's your authenticity. They don't so much care about lineage these days, but the people that are more traditionalists certainly do. So it's important from that context. Just like I was at about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, at the communications conference in Europe. And there's a devotee, perhaps Chakraparty, I can't remember his name well, but he's studying the historicity of the Mahabharata, which means Krishna. And he's doing that through, you know, there's a pillar in such and such a place that they know is 2,000 years old, and it's mentioned in there, whatever, Mahabharata and other things. I haven't read the book yet, it's a thick book. And he's using all kinds of the modern technologies and starting to do government grants and things like that. Just like when we were in, we had one day in Verona, which is near Prabhupada Desh, where the conference was, and we went, took a tour of the city. And it's, you know, it's a beautiful place. Italy is a very interesting, attractive cultural country. And there's a few places where you go and there's an opening in the ground and you look down through and there's like tile from a Roman villa from 1500 years ago. But it's like from that roof down to here, it's like the ground was lower then. And you just think about all the stuff that's been built up over the years and all the civilizations that are there in certain parts of the world underneath others. So he's doing this research in India about the Mahabharata. It's quite fascinating and establishing, because some people will say, well, you know, Krishna never existed. How do you know he existed? Which was interesting because I don't hear that a lot. But when I came back to Washington, D.C., I was talking with an Indian couple, and they were telling me that their son's very interested in Indian guy, Hindu family, living in the West. Her son's very interested and perhaps has become Christian. And it was very interesting. It was like a cultural twist because these are like 40-year-old American of Indian, I think, parents talking about, you know, we raised him with exposure to Buddhism and Christianity, whatever else. And we told him, you know, choose what you want. And he's choosing to become Christian. And I was thinking, wow, what a change. Because a few years ago, all you heard about was these sad Western families, Jewish and Christian, at least in America, Jewish and Christian families who had been liberal and encouraged their kids to explore, and they were becoming Buddhists and Vaishnavas and everything else. So here was like the reverse. So I thought, so, well, you know, you're fortunate, like, you know, be happy he's into religion. You know, you could be coming here talking about my son's into drugs, or he's doing all kinds of crazy things, or he's in jail, or, you know, that's the great thing. But I mentioned this in the context because they were saying their son was asking, how do you know Krishna existed? That was one of the arguments. We know Jesus existed, but although the lineage of their literature is highly debatable, you know, there's so many books that were accepted and books that were kind of rejected. There are different councils. Council of Nicaea, I think, that Trent, you know, we're going to take this book and not that book, and that's okay. That has to happen. But that he was using this argument, how do you know the history's there? So it's important for us to know the history and to know where the history comes from. And that's what this particular devotee is doing as far as the Mahabharata. So it's good that we know the history, we have some foundation. It may not be so important for us, but at least some people, it really is important. So that's one thought. And then I just was thinking, what are some of the practical lessons that we can take from this? From hearing about the life of Vrndavana Das Thakura, about his mother's described, we read she had the remnants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prasadam and became ecstatic at the age of 4. And later her husband died a very young age. She was a widow when her son was born. Described there's not much information about the father at all. And then Vrndavana Das Thakura. Different sources, I'm not sure what stated, if anything stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but he was either directly a disciple of Nityananda Prabhu or was considered a disciple of Nityananda Prabhu. And then he went on to describe and write the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. So a couple thoughts about, I always think in terms of what's it mean to me? You know, somebody's reading some pastimes of some great acharya, and they think, well, okay, what does that mean? How does it affect my life? Or here's a verse, how does it affect my life? Walking out on First Avenue in a few minutes. What do I take away from there? So one thought is just that individuals actually do make a difference. You know, we are a personalist philosophy, and understanding the contributions of individuals today and in the past is very important. We can see Srila Prabhupada's Murti is here and was speaking at 26 Second Avenue the other evening. So Srila Prabhupada, in what he achieved before coming to the West, and then particularly after coming to the West in the 60s and the 70s, as a unique historical personality, the fact that he was able to connect to young people, and it really is phenomenal. Sometimes I wonder how, I'm old now, 70, how do I connect with younger people? Prabhupada came at 70 at a cultural time when one of the mantras of the age was don't trust anyone over 30. And he was 70. So how did people even listen to him? What to speak of established trust in him, what to speak of following his teachings and doing all kinds of strange things like giving up intoxication, which was really strange in those days. Maybe even more so than the dress and everything else. But Prabhupada was able to make that connection. And it's very questionable. I think even, you know, scholar, we certainly would say it's impossible, but others would say it's questionable. Could anybody else other than him, as a unique individual, been able to achieve that? And we know some of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's other senior disciples, sannyasis, went to Germany, went to England, tried to do what they could do to spread Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And they met some very important people and attended some very important events and came home practically empty-handed. And Prabhupada came empty-handed without any institutional support. He didn't have a guru that was physically there saying, now you're going to go. And all of the hurrah that probably accompanied that, okay, they're off, they're going to England, they're going to Germany, may the Lord bless you. He just got in the ship with his little bag by himself, but then made all the difference in the world. So understanding that individuals like Vrndavana Das Thakura, Srila Prabhupada, great personalities, can make a difference. And of course, that means we should also never doubt that we can make a difference. And sometimes we don't give ourselves credit for that. And we don't realize that every single day we meet dozens, if not hundreds of people. And each and every one of those, we can actually have an impact on their lives. Like as I was walking, I parked the car just a couple of blocks away. I was walking by some lady walking her two dogs. You know, it's New York, right? You don't make so much contact with people. But I was kind of noticing this lady, she's middle-aged, whatever. And I just got the sense, this is a really lonely lady.
Yeah.
She's like out walking her dogs at 5 o'clock in the morning, but she's really looking for Krishna. And she's going to walk her dogs because maybe that'll be nice. And she gets back and it wasn't so nice. And now she's going to cook breakfast because maybe that'll be nice. But after breakfast, well, it wasn't that nice. And now I'm going to clean the house. It's just never ending. But they're really looking for Krishna. And we have a chance throughout the day to interact with people and maybe help them just make a little step towards Krishna. Sometimes that's just helping them feel that there are actually friendly people in the world. The world's not nasty and evil everywhere. It is nasty, it is evil in many places, but that I can touch people. Maybe it means helping people hear the holy name. Maybe it actually means in relatively rare circumstances in terms of number of people we interact with, giving them a book about Krishna, but certainly having them see devotees and see our demeanor. I mean, I can remember when I was living in Boulder, Colorado, before we came to devotee, there was this Buddhist monk that used to walk down the street with saffron and banging gong. I never interacted with him, but he just sent this message. Hello, folks. There's another way of looking at the world. it's almost like everybody kind of stopped and looked at him, and it's like for just a moment had a glimpse that there was some transcendence. So we carry that. We may not understand it. We may forget about it. We may not think it's very significant, but it's huge.
Lately, Dasa and I've been, we're going from here to there in the East Village. Oh, sorry. Lately, Dasa and I have been going around the East Village. And we do this thing where somebody's coming down the street and we go, oh, Hare Krishna. Like we know them, Hare Krishna, and they go, Hare Krishna. This guy knows me, Hare Krishna. It's so funny.
Yeah, they must
you have
know
to
you.
be there to see their response. And a lot of them go, Hare Krishna. So nice.
So by our presence, we can remind them that there's a Lord, and at least that there's some hope. So that's one thing. Individuals make a difference, and we can make a difference. And second, I'll just make 3 points, and we'll open up if there's questions. That we should, remembering Vrndavana Das Thakura, who wrote Chaitanya Bhagavat, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj, who wrote Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Prabhupada, who came across the ocean, came to this city to establish Christian consciousness, stayed up practically all night, writing books while others were sleeping. Tremendous sacrifices, gave us the Bhagavatam with his commentaries, gave us the Chaitanya Charitamrita with his commentaries, so many other books that he wrote and translated, so many gifts. So we should feel some real sense of gratitude. All these things that have been provided to us, and think about and how we can learn even from Prabhupada's life, day in and day out, how he lived and how he responded to different situations, and how they can give us guidance. So individuals make a difference. We should try to feel some sense of gratitude. And then third thing that crossed my mind, within this personalist philosophy that we are so blessed with, because it's easy to walk down the street and it's not a personalist world, because there's a lot of persons in their little cocoons. And then they talk about, especially younger people these days, they're so much caught up with their devices. You see kids walking on the street and there's like 5 of them, and they're not talking to each other. They're looking at Facebook, which is kind of full of pictures of other people walking down the street with 5 people who are not talking to each other. So it's very strange. But this really is the time of loneliness. I mean, some governments have established this epidemic of loneliness in the world. We should be aware of the fact that we should never feel lonely, even if we're alone, because of these great personalities that have given so many gifts. And we know, just as described, like sannyasis, one takes sannyas, in the Bhagavatam describes so many personalities. They would travel all around the world, from the forest and the valleys and the deep dark jungles, to develop realization that Krishna's with them at all times, that God's in the heart. And we know that Krishna's in our heart. And as Srila Prabhupada said from his own personal experience, I'm never alone. I'm always in the association of my spiritual master. So something important for us to remember, that when we maybe are affected sometimes by feelings of loneliness, we should stop and think, well, maybe, whatever. I have a husband or wife and they're not here. I don't have a husband or wife. The minds think, I wish I had a husband or wife. Sometimes the mind's like, I wish I didn't have a husband or wife. I wish I had more friends, wish I had less friends, wish they get out of my life. But there's this ongoing accepting and rejecting of wanting personal relationships, but knowing the underlying feeling of loneliness is fulfilled when we connect with Krishna, and he's actually there all the time. So I had a little bit of that experience at this event the other night, and then I'll stop. There's a big room full of people. I was the only person, I was the only Christian devotee. There was about 500 people or so. But there was one Catholic monk who was wearing some kind of white robes. I don't know what order he is, but I was kind of standing next to him. I walked over and said, I really want to thank you for wearing your white robes tonight. I said, because if you weren't here, the only thing dressed in white is me and the tablecloths. So like it was black tie event and all that. But I was walking around, I was thinking, actually, Krishna's here and he's in everybody's hearts. And these are my people. They may be a different tradition. They may be, very wealthy people. Upper West Side or wherever the wealthiest people live, but they're spirit souls, and Krishna's in their heart, and they're looking for Krishna. And we all have that in common. We're in this material world, we're all looking for Krishna. And I may feel comfortable, I may feel uncomfortable, I may feel lonely, I may feel like a lot of friends, but actually Krishna's here all the time, and he's looking after me, and I should never feel lonely.
Don't get shot.
He's always here. Okay, I heard a voice, I'm stopping. 10 minutes too. Any comments or questions on those short reflections on Vrndavana Das Thakura?
Bhima has his hand up.
Haribo, can I be heard?
Yeah, we can hear you very
Okay.
well. Thank you.
All right. Yeah,
Well,
thank you for the
See you.
class.
There's a bunch of photos there. I mean, I know how that works. You turn on the machine and you eat breakfast. And you turn on the machine and you vacuum the floor. And anyway, wherever you are, we know you there because we can hear your voice being recorded.
Okay. I think the camera's on. Anyways,
You just see like a headless, bodiless.
there we go.
There
How
you
about
are. Okay,
Yeah.
we see you. You are alive. We knew that.
I am live.
You're in some green place with a cat
Yeah. And horses.
and horses.
So that is very poignant to speak about loneliness. And there's a fine line, of course, between loneliness and solitude. And we don't talk much. You don't see that word in the index of devotee words. We don't talk about that much. We do show it, of course, if one is truly chanting, then one is alone with Krishna, and that is solitude. So I saw a movie last night. I do not watch TV at all. I just a caveat there, though I am a victim of scrolling. But I saw a movie last night called Lost. It was Mount Katahdin, and I knew this mountain. I had hiked it halfway up in Maine. And there was a movie last night called Lost on a Mountain in Maine about back in 1939. A 12-year-old went with his family to this mountain, and then he got lost, promptly lost for 9 days. He's 12 years old, and it was inclement weather. So, absolutely. And in the end, he only had, after being caught down the side, ripping his clothes on rebels, his knees in the wilderness. The thing was that how the movie portrayed it was when the kid, because the kid, as he's 90 now, or 90 in 2016 when he passed, he helped write this book, which turned into this movie. And obviously he had some play in what went into the movie. And some of the things that they showed, which was very endearing, especially to a devotee, was that this little 12-year-old who was lost and on the edge of death in day 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, where he had to, jump in streams, take his t-shirt off and try to catch fish to eat. He was basically down to his underwear in the end because, of course, the wilderness was taking it out of him. But during this time, there were various and sundry times when he would sit and stare up at the sky or up through the boughs of a pine, and he would talk to God like super personally. And God would give him an answer in the form of a bird chirping or the sun shining. And he, like when the bird was chirping, he said, I always imagined, God, that you'd have a much deeper voice, right? So because he was listening to God and the birds chirping to him, because he was really opening himself up as a 12-year-old innocent boy lost in the woods about to die. There's no greater time to reach out and to actually touch the face of God, which is what several times throughout this 9-day adventure he made reference to. And it wasn't a prayer like, Dear Jesus, or any prayer that you think you would find in a hymnal. It was simply a 12-year-old kid talking to God as, and making deals. If you do this, I'll be the best kid ever. But really talking, like really making that deal. Because he was a troubled kid. One of the reasons why he got lost is because he struck out on his own. So we strike out on our own in this world. And We find ourselves brought to our knees sometimes, especially if we're not following better advice. Like we were talking about Prabhu, the acharyas show us the path. Prabhupada himself on an adventure where he died 3 times having strokes or heart attacks on the Jaladuta. So we see that that's brought to all of us, from a 70-year-old man to a 12-year-old boy lost in the woods of Maine, that we're brought to this point where it comes down that loneliness turns into solitude, and that solitude turns into being one-on-one, sincerely, open, clearly, not through a glass darkly, but face to face with Krishna. And at those times, whether it be Vrndavana Das Thakura in a cave chanting or writing songs, beautiful songs, love songs, those love songs don't come from, an erudition. Those songs come from love. A true love song never rings true if it wasn't written from love. So we find that, as you said, Prabhu, these are my people. Here you are amongst the black tie event, but you were able to see at that time, that Krishna is there in their hearts, and that you had a duty to remind them of that, and to, show them where real happiness was. And so I was reminded, believe it or not, of just that movie last night, and I thought I'd share that with everyone because, yeah.
Thank you. That's a nice analogy, because actually we're all lost in the forest. And be able to hear Krishna in the birds, and to see Krishna in the clouds, and to be reminded of his presence, and thus encouraged to go deeper is really, really important thing. So thank you.
And also the thing, yeah, and Krishna says, I am the taste of water, I'm the light of the moon, etc. But I think it's very important for us to understand. We often ask, when is Krishna going to give me the intelligence, or does this intelligence come from Krishna that we need to make advancement, blah, blah, blah. We have to come to understand that Krishna was in that bird. The life of that bird is Krishna. And the life of our intelligence itself is Krishna, Prabhupada said. So it becomes, if we just accept the fact that everything that is Krishna. And I'm not trying to be personal here, but if we try to see Krishna everywhere showing himself, then it becomes easy to see him everywhere.
Thank you. It hasn't become easy for me yet, but I'm working on it. Thank you. And
Get out of the city and into nature.
There's a young person there playing with their sunglasses. I don't know if Daddy has a question, or they just turned on the camera there. But Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Anuttama Prabhu, wonderful class. Thank you so much. You were making this point on what do I take away from those pastimes of saintly people, and my question is, those saintly people, they seem to be saintly from birth. All those exalted devotees, they started out really young from birth. How do we have a chance? We didn't start out like that. We went to public school and all those things. So where are we heading to?
Well, first, out of due respect to all the teachers here, I also went to public school. I'm very grateful for my public school teachers. It's described that everyone in this world is a guru. They either teach you what to do or what not to do. So I think my public school experience, I have people that taught me what I should do, and some that helped me understand what I shouldn't do. But I think that's actually, thanks for highlighting. That's an important piece of it, because we have so many acharyas. I mean, Narada Muni, who's maybe like the most famous saint in all of Indian culture, in every tradition, has got Narada Muni. I don't know if every tradition, but a lot. And the whole stories are in the Bhagavatam about he was a pretty grossly materialistic person. And somehow or other, you read the past, and he became a very powerful Vaishnava and agent of the Lord, traveling all around the universe, and so many just phenomenal disciples, Prahlad Maharaj, etc. So there's one example. And when I was in Mayapur recently, they opened another wing and a museum for Srila Prabhupada. And one of the things they were talking about, one of the devotees was explaining they were with Prabhupada. I forget the context, but Prabhupada was reading about how you know, it's predicted that somebody's going to come and spread Krishna consciousness. And the conversation Prabhupada said, who knows? Maybe I'm that person. Because it was starting to manifest and he was making a difference. And that was, you know, who can understand Prabhupada's feelings and thoughts on that, but seems to understand that in his humility, I'm just trying to serve my guru, but there's a lot of amazing things happening here. And it's predicted that somebody's going to do it. Maybe it's me. And then to describe, he immediately changed the topic. He didn't want to dwell on that. He didn't want to hear that. He didn't want people reflect back to him. Oh yes, Guru Maharaj, blah, blah. But I mentioned that in the context that, you know, we're all supposed to think, and with everybody, I think the fact is we did come from a pretty poor background. I mean, sordid, thank you, that's a good word. Sordid background. And, you know, maybe in part it's just because Lord Chaitanya just wanted to show that in this age, doesn't matter how bad you are, and I'm going to scoop up this first generation, second generation of people from the lowest rungs just to kind of prove the potency of this mantra and of the Sangha. And you look and see, I mean, what ISKCON, you know, 26-second evidence, what ISKCON started as and what's happening today. And then I was speaking with a person who's a official with the, what is it, Orthodox Union something. And he was asking me how many Christian devotees. And I said, well, you know, 15th anniversary, we don't really keep numbers like some traditions, but, you know, we estimate maybe 15 million people that are like pretty seriously committed to ISKCON. You know, there's
15 million.
15, yeah. You know, it's hard to say. I mean, like in Mumbai, they have 1 million people come to Janmashtami. Maybe it's 500,000. I got to go back and check them. But it's huge, huge. And they choose to come to our temple. So they're not walking around with like card-carrying members like you do in some organizations, but they went there. So it's like if you're a Christian, like which church should you go to on Easter? Well, more or less that's your church, right? So, and he was saying that there's only 15 million Jewish people in the whole world, which I was really surprised. And that's, so how many Christian bhaktas are there by Prabhupada's influence in just 60 years or less? So thank you all very much. It's nice to have your association. We are individuals and we can make a difference no matter what our background is. Just make a difference in somebody's life today. Help them smile and help them realize they are loved by Krishna. Haribol.
Haribol.
Thank you, Anuttama Prabhu. Thank you, Johnny Tai Prabhu.
John, around the early dark hours. Hari Krishna, Bhajami Govinda, Hari Krishna, Bhajami Vrndavana Das Thakura. Hari Purusha Tamaham Bhajami Ananiya Sarvadane Priya Priyanti Ashanti Bhanti Priyanti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Radha Virahasya Govinda Hari Krishna Aham Bhajami Govinda Hari Krishna Aham Bhajami Govinda Hari Krishna Aham Bhajami Govinda Hari Krishna Bhajami Govinda Hari Krishna Aham Bhajami Govinda Hari Krishna Aham Bhajami Govinda Hari Krishna Aham Jai. Lotus feet of our spiritual master, are the only way by which we can obtain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, we can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates, and by him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. May your fame be spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter at your lotus feet. Jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Arjuna Prabhu. Dear devotees, welcome to the Afterglow. Would anyone like to share a reflection, maybe? Narottam Nitai Prabhu?
I don't have really a reflection to share. Just I just remember this one pastime of Narottam Das Thakur, how Mahaprabhu appeared in his dream, and then he ran to collected the tears collected by Nityananda Prabhu, and then he ran to Vrindavan. On the way, Mahaprabhu appeared and brought him like a pitcher of milk. And then he was asleep at that time, and then he ran again to Vrindavan. So I guess my only thing I wanted to say is that in Krishna consciousness, a lot of times the process and the goal is the same of chanting and understanding by reading and service, but a lot of times the inspiration comes and we just have to go straight ahead, and I think and to draw a parallel, Einstein also said, genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. So in that way, drawing the parallel to Srila Prabhupada's teachings is that you work hard for Krishna. Krishna shows you a glimpse initially, and then you work hard in service of Krishna, and perfect your life. So that's what I wanted to share. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Narottam Nitai Prabhu. Yeah, we go full speed. We work hard for Krishna. Adipusha Prabhu, would you like to speak? Srila Prabhupada inspiring you to say something?
Well, we do pray to Srila Prabhupada and ask, what would you like us to say? And one of the most profound parts of the class today
I think we lost Haripusha Prabhu. Well,
No. How do you know?
we lost you for a minute, Haripusha Prabhu. Can you repeat?
Say that again, please.
We lost you for a minute. Please repeat.
Hold on. Please hold on. It's a little awkward. Just a second, please. He was saying that there was a devotee who had a son who was attracted to Christianity. Remember that part of the class?
Yeah. What would you say to that son?
Well, he was saying that there's somebody doing research about, well, this rock proves that this pastime was real, and there are remnants of a temple here and this and that. Which is a good thing that somebody's trying to prove by external verifiable evidence that the pastimes of the Bhagavatam are something that are actually historical and not just myth. That's good. But one other way to address that serious question is, first of all, he's asking, is Krishna real? And because he's asking, Krishna will answer. If we really want to know, we say that Scripture says, "Sarvasya chaham mritisanivasto matas mrityu gyanam apohanam cha." The Scripture says that Krishna is in our heart, and he sees the different desires that we have, and then he answers. We get what we ask for. So if that person really wants to know, put it before the Lord. Lord, are you real? Show me. And Krishna will show. I've heard so many devotees and scriptural references where the Lord reciprocated with that seeking. Seek and you shall find, the Bible says. That Krishna hears, Lord, I really want to see you. I really want to know that you exist. And if we really are asking that question, not just facetiously asking, so we have an excuse not to answer, not to surrender to Krishna, but if we want to know the truth, like when Jesus was before the judge, Pontius Pilate, he said, what's your background? And Jesus said, I'm here to speak the truth, and those who want to know the truth will hear my voice. So that's how it is. If we have the responsibility and the choice to want Savasya Chaham Mridisani Visto Matas Mityarganam, we can choose knowledge of Krishna or forgetfulness of Krishna, and Krishna will give us that. As far as I've heard from my guru,
Thank you, Haripusha Prabhu.
Bhagavatam Prabhupada.
Yeah, I once heard one person say, there aren't bones of Jesus, there aren't bones of Adam and Eve, but there are bones of Australopithecus. So they were proven that Australopithecus is real and we're all come from Australopithecus rather than a divine source, because there aren't any bones that could prove the divinity of our origin.
I wish it was as easily proven as bones. There's bones everywhere.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else has problem with bones? Anyone else faith shaken by this argument, by the bones argument?
Krishna is perfectly capable of speaking to anyone and everyone if they're willing to hear.
Thank you. Min has her hand up.
She asks the best questions.
I really like what Eddie Pusha just shared, and I have to, it's such a good reminder, because the way I came to Krishna consciousness was because I just felt like I was missing something in my life, and So I gave up all my successful affairs and turned inward. And in the middle of pandemic, I just looked up in the sky and I was really serious about it because I was very desperate. Like, if there's God and if you're real, can you show me who you are? And just no joke, like immediately 3 bhakti teachers just came into my life when I couldn't even go anywhere. And I forget that that's how I came to Krishna consciousness at times, when my faith is sort of shaken and I can't really trust that he's really there. But it is so true that when I do ask so sincerely to Krishna, just a little thing, I just can't do it on my own, or can you just let me know? And when I'm sincere, he really does respond almost immediately. So yeah,
Why
thank you
not?
for reminding us that. And I'll never forget when you said, it just really stayed with me, Adipusha. Once you said, it is possible to please Krishna. And I just never thought about that. Just always think that it's, if not impossible, that I can't do it. But what an encouragement to hear that, it is possible to please Krishna. So thank you so much.
That's what Prabhupada told us. And that's our success criteria. And there's that thing with Mother Teresa, St. Teresa of Lisieux. She said, not everyone is called upon to do great things for God. But any one of us can do some small thing with great love. Right? Any one of us can do anything. We can do something, Lord, this is all I can do. And then he's pleased. We don't have to compare ourselves to anybody else. But we should do our best.
See, men prayed sincerely, and Krishna didn't send her Australopithecus. He sent her 3 bhakti teachers. Krishna sent her Adi Purusha Prabhu in his wonderful statements.
Prabhupada, it's not my statement. Ram is making his statement. Hi, Ram.
My wife says that Krishna sent her an Australopithecus for her husband. Well, we have to wrap it up, dear devotees. We have to go and apply what we learn. Thank you very much. We are going to ask Vaidi. Vaidi, please unmute yourself and say Hare Krishna as loud as you can. Vaidi. Ram, call her.
Ram. Hi, Ram. Ram. Hi, Krishna. Krishna's in your heart.
All right. Okay, fine. Let's see. Emily Thompson, please unmute yourself and say Hare Krishna as loud as you can, even if you're in the office cubicle. Doesn't matter.
She might be busy.
She might be busy. Okay. Narottam Nita, Prabhu, then you. Are you driving? Can you yell in the car?
I'm not driving outside, but
Okay.
yeah.
Can you yell so your neighbors can hear?
Sure. Hare Krishna.
Hi, Radhe.
Sweet.
Prabhupada.
Thank
You
you
want the
very
whole
much.
mantra or just
The
one?
whole thing? Yes, Narottam
Okay.
Nita, Prabhu. The whole
Hare
thing.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nice. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, dear devotees. Come again.